She had always been drawn to people who were bold, who spoke confidently and carried themselves with a kind of natural authority. In her eyes, life was full of noise, action, and people who demanded attention. She liked the way some people could fill a room with their presence, and she had always assumed that was what made a person strong, admirable, and worth being close to. She never expected to be captivated by someone quiet. But life has a way of surprising us. The first time she noticed him, he seemed almost invisible at the crowded gathering they both attended. He did not laugh loudly or join the conversations eagerly. He did not flirt or try to make an impression. In a room where people shouted to be heard and gestured to be seen, he sat quietly, almost as if he were part of the furniture. Yet there was something about him that caught her attention. His eyes, calm and observant, moved around the room with ease, taking in details that most people overlooked. He noticed the subtle changes in the lighting, the small gestures of the people nearby, and even the little interactions that went unnoticed by everyone else. He was silent, yes, but his silence had depth. She found herself watching him without fully understanding why. There was a stillness about him that felt rare, almost precious. People often confuse quietness with weakness, but there was no weakness in him. In fact, there was a sense of confidence in the way he carried himself without needing to be seen or heard. She felt drawn to that kind of strength, the kind that did not need applause or recognition. She wanted to understand him, to see why he did not speak as others did, and what thoughts might be behind those quiet eyes. Over the next few weeks, she found herself seeking his company more and more. He did not talk much, but when he did, his words were thoughtful, precise, and meaningful. He had a way of answering questions in a calm, clear manner that made her think deeply. His voice was not loud or commanding, but it had weight. She realized that she enjoyed listening to him, not just because he said interesting things, but because there was a kind of honesty in his speech. He did not speak to impress anyone. He spoke because he wanted to share something true, something real. They began spending more time together, sometimes in long walks through quiet streets or in small cafes where the noise of the world felt far away. She learned that he had simple pleasures in life. He liked the smell of wet earth after rain, the sound of wind moving through trees, and the way sunlight danced on the surface of water. These small details, which she had never paid much attention to before, became more beautiful when she saw them through his eyes. His quiet presence brought a sense of calm she had never experienced with anyone else. Despite his silence, there were moments when she caught glimpses of his humor. He did not make jokes loudly or try to be funny, but sometimes, in the most unexpected ways, he would smile or make a small remark that made her laugh out loud. It was subtle, almost like discovering a hidden treasure. She realized that his quiet nature did not mean he was boring. On the contrary, there was a depth to him that she had never found in anyone else. She began to feel a sense of connection with him that went beyond words, beyond appearances, beyond the ordinary ways people fall in love. Friends and family noticed her growing attachment. Some of them questioned her choice. "He is too quiet," they said. "How will he handle life's challenges? How will he protect and care for you?" She listened politely, but she could not explain what they could not see. There was a strength in him that did not need to be loud or aggressive. There was a sense of awareness, a calm wisdom that guided his actions even when he did not speak. She trusted that strength, even when others could not. As their relationship deepened, she started to notice other qualities about him. He was observant and thoughtful. He remembered the smallest details: her favorite flowers, the way she liked her tea, the stories she had told once and never mentioned again. He listened not just to her words but to her feelings, understanding what she needed before she even said it. There was a care in his silence that spoke louder than any words could. She began to understand that his quietness was not emptiness. It was a different kind of presence, one that required patience and attention to truly appreciate. Slowly, the idea of marrying him began to take shape in her mind. She imagined a life with him, one where she could rely on his steady, calm presence. She imagined a home filled not with noise and chaos, but with thoughtfulness and understanding. She thought about how he had made her feel safe without ever needing to prove anything, how he had shown her that strength could be gentle, and how he had taught her the beauty of noticing the small things in life. When she finally told him that she wanted to spend her life with him, he did not react with loud enthusiasm or grand gestures. He simply nodded, a small, quiet smile on his face, and said that he would be honored. That simple moment, filled with calm assurance, felt more meaningful to her than any declaration of love she had ever heard. She realized that life with him would be different from what she had imagined, but it would be rich, steady, and full of unexpected depth. In the days leading up to their engagement, she reflected on how strange and wonderful it was that someone so quiet could have such a profound effect on her life. She realized that in a world full of noise, there was extraordinary power in silence. There was a story behind his quiet nature, a life shaped by experience, discipline, and thoughtfulness, even if she did not yet know all the details. She felt lucky to have discovered him, lucky that she had the patience to see beyond the surface, and lucky that she could recognize the rare kind of strength that does not need to announce itself. And so she decided to marry him, not for his words, not for the attention he could command, but for the quiet, steady presence that had slowly, without fanfare, captured her heart. She knew that choosing him meant choosing a life that might not always be loud or exciting in the conventional sense, but it also meant choosing a life filled with sincerity, calm strength, and unexpected beauty. Little did she know that the quiet human she had chosen to marry held even greater surprises, and that the calm life she imagined was only the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would soon change everything. After their wedding, life settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and new. She had imagined marriage as a time of celebration and shared joy, but she quickly realized it was also about understanding and patience. Living with someone quiet required her to slow down and notice things she had never paid attention to before. His silence was not emptiness, it was presence. It demanded that she listen with more than her ears, that she watch with more than her eyes, and that she feel with more than her heart. At first, neighbors and relatives found it odd. Some whispered behind their hands, wondering why she had chosen someone so reserved. "He doesn't talk enough," they said. "How will he handle the challenges of life? How can he protect or provide if he barely speaks?" But she ignored the gossip. She had seen a strength in him that others could not. His quiet ways were deliberate, disciplined, and meaningful. Slowly, she began to understand that strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is patient, steady, and waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Their days were simple but fulfilling. He rose early every morning, often before dawn, to tend to small tasks around their home. She would wake to find breakfast prepared, clothes neatly arranged, or letters written and ready to be sent. He moved through the house with care, not out of pride but out of respect for the space they shared. She marveled at how effortlessly he anticipated needs without being asked, noticing small details that others might overlook. It was in these small, quiet actions that his true character shone. Though he rarely spoke about his past or ambitions, she noticed glimpses of his abilities and talents. He was skilled with his hands, fixing broken tools, repairing furniture, and even crafting small gifts for friends and family. People admired his work but often did not understand the precision and focus behind it. Every action seemed to flow from thoughtfulness rather than desire for praise. She admired this, realizing that a person's worth is not measured by words or attention but by consistency, care, and integrity. One day, a neighbor approached them with a problem. A young boy had fallen from a tree and injured his leg. Panic spread quickly among the villagers who did not know how to help. While others hesitated, he quietly stepped forward. With calm, practiced hands, he stabilized the boy, applied a makeshift splint, and stayed with him until help arrived. No one had seen him act so decisively before, and they were stunned. She watched him in awe, realizing that his quiet nature hid more strength and courage than she had ever imagined. Even at home, his habits were disciplined. He read every day, studied maps, and kept track of small details in journals he rarely let anyone see. She sometimes peeked at his notes and realized he was planning and thinking far ahead, not just for himself but for them, their home, and their community. He was constantly preparing, not to show off but to ensure that when challenges came they could face them with confidence. She began to understand that this quiet human she had married was far from ordinary. Their marriage also brought moments of shared laughter and joy. Though he rarely spoke in long sentences when he did, his words were precise, often carrying humor or insight that made her smile or laugh. Sometimes they would sit in silence enjoying the peaceful sounds of the world around them, the wind rustling leaves, birds singing in the morning, or rain tapping gently on the roof. These moments of quiet companionship became the backbone of their relationship. She realized that love does not always need conversation. Sometimes it lives in shared understanding, small acts of care, and the simple comfort of being together. She also noticed how his quiet nature affected their relationship with others. Villagers began to respect him, even if they did not fully understand him. They saw his helpfulness, his patience, and his skill in handling situations calmly. Slowly, the whispers of doubt about his quietness turned into admiration. People began to realize that strength is not always loud and visible. Sometimes it is the kind that protects, supports, and works behind the scenes, unseen by most, but deeply felt by those who depend on it. One afternoon, she tried to encourage him to speak more openly with neighbors, but he shook his head gently and smiled. "Words are not always needed," he said simply. She realized that he had a philosophy of life, a way of seeing the world that valued action, thought, and understanding over noise. He had chosen quiet, not out of fear or shyness, but as a deliberate way to live meaningfully. She admired him more deeply for it, feeling proud and fortunate to be his partner. Their life together was not without challenges. There were times when she wanted reassurance, moments when she felt unsure about the future, and moments when the quietness felt isolating. But each time he showed his care in small ways, preparing her favorite meal, leaving thoughtful notes, or simply being present without saying a word. She learned that his silence was not distance. It was a different language of love. Over time, she began to see that patience, observation, and understanding were equally as powerful as words and actions combined. As months passed, their bond strengthened. She realized that marrying a quiet human had taught her important lessons about life, patience, and trust. She had come to see that people are not always what they seem at first glance. The man she had chosen, who appeared unremarkable to others, was in fact extraordinary in subtle, profound ways. His quietness was a shield and a strength, protecting not just himself but those he cared about, allowing him to respond thoughtfully when the moment demanded it. By the end of the first year of their marriage, she felt a deep sense of peace. She no longer worried about how others saw him or how he should act. Instead, she focused on the life they were building together, appreciating the little things he did each day. She had married someone unexpected, someone who had shown her that true strength does not always announce itself, and she realized that this quiet human, with his thoughtful presence and calm strength, had already changed her life in ways she could not have imagined. She understood that life with him would not be ordinary, but it would be meaningful, steady, and full of depth. She looked forward to the future, confident that together they could face anything, without needing to shout, without needing to perform, and without needing the approval of others. She had married a quiet human, and already he had shown her that quietness could be more powerful than words, more protective than action, and more extraordinary than anyone could expect. Life had grown comfortable in the small village where they lived, but one evening, that calm was shattered. The sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky with orange and pink hues, and she was sitting by the window, watching the day end, when she first sensed that something was wrong. A few villagers were running frantically down the main street shouting warnings, and she could hear the distant clatter of objects falling and breaking. Fear ran through her, and she realized that a stranger, aggressive and unsteady, had appeared, threatening the peace of their quiet village. Panic spread quickly. People who were usually confident froze, unsure what to do. They did not know the stranger's intentions, and the chaos made it impossible for them to act effectively. She felt her heart pounding in her chest, uncertain whether to hide, to run, or to confront the danger. And then, almost instinctively, her eyes turned to him. Her husband, who had been quietly reading in the corner, stood up. There was no hesitation, no fear, only calm determination. He moved toward the door with steady, measured steps, his eyes fixed on the chaos outside. She wanted to call out to him to stop him, but something told her that he already knew what to do. He opened the door and stepped into the fading light, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. He did not shout, did not gesture, did not make a scene. He simply stood there, observing, analyzing, and preparing. There was a confidence in his stance, a readiness that she had seen before in subtle ways, but never so clearly, never with such intensity. Then she saw it, the sword. He drew it slowly, carefully, almost as if it were a natural extension of his body. It was a simple blade, not flashy or overly decorated, but there was an elegance to the way he held it. She felt a shiver run down her spine. This quiet human whom she had married thinking she knew him was showing a side of himself she had never imagined. It was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The villagers outside were in chaos, trying to protect themselves and others. The stranger was aggressive, swinging his own weapon recklessly, making sudden movements and threatening anyone who came near. Fear had frozen most people in place, but he did not hesitate. With smooth, deliberate movements, he positioned himself between the danger and the villagers. Every step he took was precise, measured, and controlled. Every movement of his sword was efficient, striking only where needed and always with purpose. She could not believe what she was seeing. The man who had seemed so quiet and ordinary in daily life was now a force of calm power. He moved with incredible skill, anticipating the stranger's moves before they happened and reacting with precision. Each motion was deliberate, controlled, and perfectly timed. It was as if he had trained for this moment his entire life, even if he had never spoken of it. The stranger faltered, confused by his unexpected opponent. He had assumed that the villagers would be easy to scare or intimidate, but now he faced someone completely different. This quiet human, who had seemed so gentle and unremarkable at home, was capable of extraordinary focus and strength. He did not strike out of anger, but out of necessity, using his skill to protect those who could not defend themselves. As she watched, her fear mixed with awe. She had married a man she thought she understood, and yet, here he was, revealing a depth and capability she had never imagined. Her admiration grew, but so did her understanding of what it meant to truly know someone. This was not just physical skill. This was intelligence, strategy, and calm courage, all combined. Every decision he made in those moments spoke of discipline and experience far beyond what she had ever expected. The villagers slowly began to notice. First, they were frozen with fear, unsure what to do. Then, as they watched him protect them, their fear shifted to amazement. They realized that this quiet human had a presence that could inspire courage, even in the most terrifying situations. They began to move more confidently, helping to support him, following his lead, and understanding that his calmness was the key to overcoming the chaos. The encounter did not last long, though it felt like hours to her. The stranger was subdued, disarmed, and eventually led away by those who had gathered courage. No one was seriously harmed, thanks to the quick and precise actions of her husband. When the danger finally ended, she rushed toward him, wanting to touch him to make sure he was safe. He looked at her calmly, almost as if nothing extraordinary had happened, and she realized how accustomed he was to controlling situations like this, even if they were rare for the village. She wanted to ask him 1,000 questions at once. How did he know what to do? How had he learned to move so confidently and so skillfully? But he only smiled gently, a quiet expression that contained so much meaning. It had to be done, he said softly. Everyone was counting on it. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of responsibility, humility, and understanding. She realized that this was why he had always been quiet. He was always thinking, always prepared, always aware of what needed to happen before anyone else even realized it. That night, After the village had calmed and the chaos had passed, she reflected on what she had seen. The quiet human she had married had a depth of courage, skill, and wisdom that went far beyond what anyone could have guessed. She had loved him for his gentle nature, his thoughtfulness, and his calm presence. But now she understood that these qualities were only part of who he was. Beneath that quiet exterior was a strength that could protect, inspire, and act decisively when the moment demanded it. She also realized that her life with him would never be ordinary. This moment had changed her understanding of him, and of herself. She had married someone she thought she knew, but life had shown her that people are often far more complex than they appear. Strength, courage, and skill are not always loud or visible. Sometimes they are hidden, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room has the power to change everything. As they returned home, that evening she stayed close to him, feeling both relief and admiration. She knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. The calm, simple life they had shared was no longer entirely predictable. Danger, responsibility, and unexpected events could appear at any time, but now she also knew that with him by her side there was nothing she could not face. She understood for the first time that the quiet human she had married was extraordinary in ways she had never imagined. Not because he shouted, fought for attention, or demanded respect, but because he possessed a quiet courage, a steady mind, and a skill that could change everything in a single moment. Her respect for him deepened, and she felt an unspoken pride in having chosen someone so remarkable. That night, as she lay beside him, she thought about the future with new clarity. She knew that life would bring challenges, uncertainty, and danger at times, but she also knew that his calm strength would guide them through anything. The quiet human she had married had revealed his true self, and she realized that everything in her life, her trust, her love, and her admiration had only just begun to grow. After the evening of chaos had ended and the village had returned to its quiet routine, she could not stop thinking about what she had witnessed. The calmness, skill, and courage he had shown were unlike anything she had ever seen. Questions swirled in her mind. How had he learned to move with such precision? How had he known exactly what to do? Why had he been so prepared for something that had seemed completely unexpected? She realized that the man she had married, the quiet human she thought she knew, had a story he had never shared. She decided to ask him gently when they were alone in the warmth of their home. He listened patiently, as he always did, and then slowly began to share pieces of his past, pieces that painted a picture of someone she had never imagined. He spoke of a childhood filled with discipline, of teachers who had trained him not just in reading and writing but in physical skill, strategy, and self-control. He had learned to remain calm in difficult situations, to observe before acting, and to respond with precision rather than emotion. This had been a part of his life long before she had ever met him, a foundation he had built quietly so that he could live a life of purpose. As he spoke, she realized that his quietness was not a limitation. It was a choice. He had chosen to live simply, to observe, and to prepare in silence. He had chosen to avoid unnecessary attention and conflict, to remain humble, and to protect those around him without needing recognition. Every story he told made her admire him more deeply. His strength was not just physical, it was mental, emotional, and moral. He had cultivated patience, wisdom, and the ability to act decisively in critical moments. She asked him about the sword and how he had learned to use it. He explained that the training had started when he was very young, guided by teachers who valued discipline, focus, and respect for others. He had been taught that strength without control was dangerous, and that true courage involved protecting and supporting others, not seeking glory. The way he had acted that evening was a reflection of all those lessons, carefully applied in a real-life situation. Hearing this, she understood that the quiet human she had married was extraordinary, in a way that could not be measured by words or appearances. She had loved him for his calm presence, his thoughtfulness, and the way he noticed the little things in life. But now she loved him even more. She realized that there were layers to him, deep layers built over years of practice, experience, and reflection. His quiet nature was a shield, a tool, and a sign of his strength. The more he shared, the more she felt a mixture of admiration and humility. She understood that she had married someone who carried not just skill, but a sense of responsibility. He had learned to remain calm under pressure, to think before acting, and to use his strength to help rather than harm. She realized that his quietness had never been a flaw. It had been a part of his wisdom, a way of living that allowed him to remain aware, thoughtful, and ready for anything. Over the next few days, she watched him in new ways. She noticed how he moved around the house with careful attention to detail, how he approached each task thoughtfully, and how he remained calm, even in stressful moments. She realized that everything he did was intentional, designed to create order, comfort, and safety. His presence was a quiet anchor, a stability she had never experienced before. She also realized that their life together would now be different. She had known love before, but now she understood it in a new dimension. Love, she realized, could mean trusting someone to act wisely when it mattered most, respecting their inner strength, and sharing a partnership built on mutual support and understanding. She felt grateful for the life they had and excited for the future, knowing that together they could face whatever challenges might come. By the end of the week, she had come to see their marriage in a completely new light. She no longer thought of him as merely quiet or reserved. She saw him as someone capable of extraordinary skill, someone with wisdom and courage beyond her imagination, and someone who had chosen to use that strength not for himself, but for the people he cared about. She felt proud, inspired, and deeply connected to him, understanding that life with him would always be rich, full of discovery, and grounded in trust. And so, as the days passed, she began to embrace this new understanding. She realized that she had married a quiet human, not because he seemed ordinary, but because he was truly extraordinary in ways that could not be seen at first glance. His calm, deliberate nature, combined with his hidden skills and deep sense of responsibility, made him someone she could rely on completely. She understood now that life with him would be a journey of shared growth, respect, and admiration, and she felt ready to walk that path, knowing that together they could face any challenge. Life continued after that pivotal evening, but nothing was quite the same. The villagers, once skeptical of his quiet nature, now looked at him with a mixture of awe and respect. They had witnessed his strength firsthand, and stories of his actions spread quietly through the community. People began to trust him not just as a neighbor, but as someone who could protect and guide when danger appeared. She felt proud, not because of the recognition he received, but because she knew the depth of his character and the reasons behind his actions. At home, life was peaceful once again, but with a new sense of purpose. They continued their daily routines, but now she noticed how much he had been preparing for the world around them, even in moments that seemed ordinary. His quietness was a constant reminder of patience, careful observation, and thoughtful action. She felt grateful for the stability he brought into her life, for the care and precision he applied to even the smallest tasks, and for the unspoken protection he offered. Over time, their relationship grew stronger. She began to see that the quiet human she had married had not only skill and courage, but also an extraordinary emotional depth. He understood people, their fears, their hopes, and their needs. He had learned to act not from impulse but from understanding, and she realized that his ability to remain calm and decisive came from years of self-discipline. She admired him not just for what he could do with a sword, but for how he approached every aspect of life with careful thought and kindness. Their love deepened as well. She learned to communicate in ways that matched his quiet nature, sharing thoughts, feelings, and observations without needing constant words or explanations. They developed a rhythm together, an understanding that transcended conversation. She realized that love could exist in silent gestures, in careful attention, and in shared experiences that did not require loud declarations. She felt safe, inspired, and profoundly connected to him, knowing that he had chosen to share his life with her completely. The village faced other challenges over time, small accidents, natural difficulties, and occasional threats. But he was always prepared. His actions were calm, precise, and measured, protecting people without seeking praise. She watched him and felt admiration grow daily, not just for his skill, but for his character. The quiet human she had married had taught her that strength comes in many forms, and that true courage is often unseen until it is needed. She also realized that her life had changed in ways she could not have anticipated. She had once thought of quietness as something ordinary, even limiting. Now she understood it as a sign of deep thought, preparation, and wisdom. Her husband had shown her that extraordinary people do not always announce themselves. They wait, observe, and act when it matters most. She felt lucky, honored, and proud to be his partner, knowing that together they shared something rare and precious. As years passed, they built a life full of trust, mutual respect, and shared understanding. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and found joy in everyday moments. He remained quiet, deliberate, and thoughtful, but she knew that his strength and courage would always be there when needed. Their bond grew stronger, grounded in admiration, love, and shared experience. She realized that life with him had become more than ordinary. It was extraordinary in the quietest, most meaningful ways. Looking back, she understood that marrying a quiet human had been the best choice of her life. Not because he was loud, flashy, or commanding, but because he was steady, thoughtful, and capable of incredible courage when it mattered most. He had changed her understanding of strength, love, and life itself. And she knew that together, they could face any challenge, knowing that the quiet human she had married would always be there to guide, protect, and inspire her. Their life became a story of balance, quiet strength, meeting thoughtful love, courage, paired with patience, and ordinary days punctuated by extraordinary moments. She understood now that true heroism does not always shout, and true love does not always speak. Sometimes it simply exists, steady, calm, and profound, waiting to reveal itself in the moments that matter most. And in her quiet human, she found exactly that, a partner, protector, and lifelong companion who had transformed her world without ever needing to raise his voice.